In the early part of July, I asked you what should be the next book I critique for LTM. You guys answered and you said The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. Now, as you can see, Voidy's already trying to take some bites out of it, and I have some thoughts, so let's dig in before Voidy eats the whole thing. Voidy, do you want to go ahead and set the background for us? While recording this video, I realized that there are a copious amount of spoilers. If this is not something that you're into, you're going to have to skip pretty much to the end of the video just to figure out what I'm going to read next time. Because many of the things that I think did and didn't work are related to these plot points. So if you're okay with it, I always like the background that Voidy picks. So what is The Lost Bookshop about? Well, we have three main characters, Opaline, Martha, and Henry. Opaline's set in the 1900s, early 1900s, like 1920s, 30s, 40s, around then. She's growing up under an abusive brother who's trying to marry her off. She sells a rare book that her father gave her to escape to Paris. She joins a collective of famous writers and book dealers. She falls in love. She's having a great time until her brother shows up. And James Joyce has to help her escape to Ireland. He knows somebody who knows somebody. So Opaline goes to Ireland to try and escape her brother. While in Ireland, Opaline decides that she's going to open up a bookshop. She's going to sell antiquarian books, or rare books. So she goes to these book sales, these book auctions. She's finding books to sell. And she has this idea that if she could sell something belonging to Emily Bronte, this would be fantastic. It would mean so much to her. So she goes off looking for anything related to Emily Bronte. She finds the last closest living relative, and it's kind of a letdown. There's not really anything for her. No notes, no manuscript, nothing. Well, this is not great. But the relative feels guilty for Opaline and gives her a sewing kit. Opaline takes the sewing kit. It's something, right? She's just happy to have something. And heads back home. And when she gets home, she thinks about, what can she do with the sewing kit? She looks at it, investigates it, and inside is a missing Emily Bronte manuscript. This is fantastic. Her love from Paris has also shown up about this time. They have relations. This ends up with Opaline getting pregnant. And while he's there, she basically realizes he's just using her to get close to these manuscripts that he wants to sell, that he wants to take them from her. She accuses him of this. He runs off, and we kind of get an idea where, because shortly after this, Opaline's brother has taken her captive and put her in an insane asylum because she got pregnant out of wedlock. While in the asylum, Opaline gives birth, and she's told it's a stillborn. This is devastating, but she also loses her friend to some coughing sickness. She spends years there, and it's just more than she can bear. She decides that she's going to take her own life. She's telling the doctor this, and she's realizing while she's doing this that the doctor knows she's not insane, that he's doing this because of the money Opaline's brother is giving him. So she basically blackmails him, says, I'm either going to kill myself and cut this off, or if you just let me go. I guess it's not really blackmail, it's like making a deal or something. She's trying to buy her freedom, right? If you let me go, you can keep collecting the money that my brother is giving you. I will just stay out of all this. But please, if you don't let me go, I'm going to cut off that money because I'm just going to kill myself. Oh, well, the doctor wants the money, so he says, fine, go, leave. As long as you lay low, it's fine. Opaline goes back to the bookshop. There's an Austrian prisoner of war at the bookshop. Opaline's a little offended that he's there. They end up being friends. At the end of the war, he goes home, takes care of his father until he dies, and then returns. The prisoner of war returns. The father died. And Opaline decides at this moment she's going to destroy her brother. She sees an article in the paper. She talks to the paper to get his war crimes basically put into print and remove any chance of him having a financial future. She decides to go tell her brother that she's doing this. And while there, her brother tells her that he's not her brother, but really her father. And Opaline doesn't want to hear this. She's leaving, but her dad brother tells her one more thing, that the child didn't die, that he had the child sold off for money. He sold the child. Oh my gosh. So Opaline just leaves. She's like, I'm out of here. The brother commits suicide. Opaline doesn't even look back because she doesn't want to be a part of this anymore. She goes to the bookshop and she's like, my daughter will eventually find me. That's the end of Opaline's story. But we also have Martha and Henry. So what's their story? Martha and Henry's storylines are a little bit easier to kind of skim through quickly. They're tied together. They're both in modern day Ireland. Martha has gone to 12 Halfpenny Lane seeking employment from Madam Bowden to try and escape a domestic abuse situation. Henry is looking for the bookshop because he knows that if he can find it, he might be able to find the missing Emily Bronte manuscript. Their paths cross because he's snooping around. They eventually develop a friendship, and she's starting to trust again. She's starting to trust Henry. Henry realizes he's falling in love with her and goes back to England to break off his engagement. He leaves word, but the word doesn't make it back to Martha. This trust that's broken makes it really hard for Martha to really do anything other than just buckle down and try to put the pieces of her life back together. Of course, at this moment, that is when her husband shows up and is beating her black and blue. Madam Bowden steps in, and of course, when Martha's not looking, her husband winds up at the bottom of a staircase, dead. Okay, so Madam Bowden tells her to, go to the shops, get an alibi, basically. I'll take care of this. When she comes back, the body's been dumped in a river. The police show up. They eventually, let it, don't believe that she's at fault, even though, the situation might seem like she would be. She goes to the funeral. She's dealing with all of these emotions and this really difficult situation because she was abused by him. And yet everyone else saw him as a really great guy. She comes back, and Henry also comes back. Now, she can't really trust Henry anymore, so that takes time. It eventually cools. Henry and Martha start to become a little bit more romantic, and Martha's been inking these words that she thinks of on her skin. As we get near the end of the novel, we are starting to realize, like Henry and Martha are starting to realize, that the words on Martha's skin are the missing Emily Bronte manuscript. How they're going to prove it is going to be hard because they don't have the real one. But at least he's found it, which is symbolically important. Martha's started taking college courses. She's starting to learn how to be herself. And when they get to the point where they're going to find the bookshop, this is when Madam Bowden disappears. They find the bookshop and they take over as stewards of the bookshop, Henry and Martha together. So there's very strong themes of abuse and empowerment, like female empowerment. I would say not just abuse, but male abuse. Almost all of the abusers in this book are men, if not all of them, including Henry's abuser, which is his drunken father. So we have themes of abuse. We have, of course, the love of literature and rare books, and magical realism. Martha has an ability to read people, and this has alienated her in the past. Madam Bowden is some sort of spirit, whether she's guardian angel or not, but she's some sort of spirit. And then we have this disappearing bookshop that basically reappears when somebody who is lost is searching for it. So that's what the Lost Bookshop, is about. So let's talk about what worked and what didn't. Before I get too far, I want to say that the writing's pretty solid. It's great to not have to trip over grammatical issues or word-to-word flow. It's not a given these days, and I appreciate it when a book is easy to read. The magical realism in this book is great. It reminds me so much of these classic novels and the portrayal of the magical realism that I like it. It has this nice, classic literary fiction feel because of the soft magic. And this is fantastic. In the way that Martha can read people like books, in the way that Madam Bowden is a spirit or guardian angel or something, in the way that the bookshop appears for those who are lost that need something but doesn't exist sort of outside of that. All of it together is great. I like it. Martha's character, unfortunately, I know people who have gone, who have been domestically abused, and her character reads very much like how those people act. It's unfortunate that this happens, but at least how Martha reads and comes across on the page feels honest and true to what someone who has gone through that acts like. So those are the things I liked. What didn't I like? Well, I'm not going to hold it against Evie Woods that I could see elements of the story coming. In this type of story, it seems inevitable that you're telescoping these things out, right? Like the novel on Martha's skin is the novel that Opaline finds. I mean, after Martha finds the book in the cellar in her residence, I mean, like where she's sleeping, there's this book that Opaline wrote. And when she finds that, it's like, okay, so that's not the book that's on Martha's skin. It's clearly the Emily Bronte manuscript that Opaline finds. You can kind of see that coming. It's not hidden. And that I don't have an issue with. There's this symbolic representation of Henry is searching for this book. This book is written on Martha's skin, ergo, Henry is searching for Martha. And I'm fine with that. That I'm fine with. But there's other things that are kind of, I would say, easy to predict that I am not really sure add. And in fact, their presence makes me kind of sigh on the inside. That would be that Martha is the great granddaughter of Opaline. I mean, you can see it coming. We almost don't even need Martha's mom to say that she was adopted. When we know that Opaline was pregnant and the baby was taken away, first off, I didn't think that the baby was stillborn. It's pretty clear to me that the baby was taken away. And so I just I'm like, okay, yeah, this is going to be somehow Martha's mom or Martha's, grandma, like somehow Martha's family line. But does that need to be? I mean, quite frankly, it takes the message that the suffering that Martha should care about, like when Martha's opening up to other people, the people that she should find as worthy of opening up to are essentially family or somebody who's searching for her. And I'm not sure that that's as strong a message as saying like, hey, you can find compassion for all people who have suffered under abuse. Just because you're not related to Opaline doesn't mean that you can't care for her. You don't, it doesn't have to be family. It can be more than that. And maybe it's just tidy. Maybe it's some convention that I'm not aware of, but I almost want Opaline's baby to have been stillborn. Just because of how much more tragic her stay in the asylum would be, or at least that's how I would see. Like, her baby taking away, there's this hope that she can find the child eventually. And this is the hope that she professes at the end of the novel, Opaline's storyline, is that the daughter's going to find her. But that's not... That almost just makes the asylum an inconvenience. I mean, a really terrible one. But what would make it so much more tragic is if she actually did lose the baby. And then if you really wanted to push that element of her brother as her father and her, father did this to the granddaughter, you could have him instructing the staff to, kill the child or something. I mean, like, you can breed that evilness of selling your granddaughter into him in other ways, and in maybe more extreme ways, because he already has a propensity to kill soldiers that have shown cowardice, even though they're like on the same side. So I don't know. I just, that particular element, I could see it coming, and I think I would have been more surprised if it didn't happen. And I think it's more emotionally powerful if they're not related, that Martha can find this connection to Opaline that isn't familial. And so I don't think that worked necessarily. So that's what I didn't like. But who is Madam Bowden? I know who I think she is, and I've put that in my critique of The Lost Bookshop up on learningtomaster.com. Go ahead and read it if you want to know what I think. But I want to know what you think. So leave a comment below, and I am really excited to see who you guys think Madam Bowden is. So what's the verdict? Is Voidy going to eat The Lost Bookshop or not? Well, before we do that, Voidy, I think we're good with the background, so can you go ahead and take that away? Excellent. Now, I want to explain what goes into the process of deciding if the book goes into the void or not. There are books that just fail on a craft level, and I don't think really deserve to be out in the world because they just haven't gone through enough editorial review yet. Those books, easy to throw in the void. I can see them. This one was a little bit harder because I think that from the craft perspective, this book works. But I'm not the target audience, and this is my personalized literary void. So, Voidy, be gentle, but you do get to eat The Lost Bookshop. So there it is. Now, the question is, what are we going to read next? Well, YouTube, you came through for me again. I asked you and you answered. The book is Horror Movie, a novel by Paul Tremblay. I'm really excited about this one, so go ahead and pick up a copy and we can talk about it. If you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe. I wouldn't want you to miss out on a single book critique, craft discussion, or writing advice. Set up notifications so that you don't miss a single video. Thank you to Ivo Reinha and Oleg Gimalinsky for your artwork. Yet again, this video is better because of your work. And thank you for watching. I'll catch you right here next time on LTM.